shattered bonds and frozen hope. The servant in shadows. The great hall of Silverwood Pack smelled like roasted venison, honey mead, and the sharp scent of authority. For Alara, it smelled like survival. She moved along the stone walls like a ghost, her bare feet silent against the cold floor, refilling goblets and clearing plates that the higher-ranking wolves barely noticed. Her long chestnut hair hung in a simple braid down her back, and her hazel eyes stayed fixed downward. That was the rule for Omegas. Never look up. Never meet their eyes. Never forget your place. Alara was the lowest of the low in Silverwood Pack. Her parents had died when she was 7, killed during a rogue attack while protecting the pack's northern border. Instead of being honored, she was marked as unlucky. The pack whispered that tragedy followed her bloodline. By the time she turned 8, she was serving meals. By 10, she was scrubbing floors. By 18, she had learned that silence was her only shield. Tonight was different. Tonight was the lunar mating ceremony, the sacred night when the moon goddess revealed fated mates. The entire pack gathered in the hall, dressed in their finest leather and furs. Alara wore the same gray servant's tunic she always wore, patched at the elbows and stained from years of work. Alpha Daemon sat on the carved wooden throne at the head of the hall. He was 26, powerful, and devastatingly handsome with jet-black hair, sharp blue eyes, and a presence that commanded every room. He had taken the alpha position 2 years ago after his father's death, and his rule was absolute. Cold, efficient, ruthless. Beside him sat Victoria, a beautiful she-wolf from the wealthy Nightshade Pack. Her auburn hair cascaded in perfect waves, and her emerald eyes sparkled with ambition. She was not his fated mate, but she was his chosen partner for political alliance. Everyone knew she expected to be named Luna tonight, ceremony or not. The bond that burns. Alara refilled a warrior's cup, her hands steady despite the trembling in her chest. She had felt it for weeks now, a strange pull deep in her soul, a thread that tugged her toward the front of the hall, toward him, terrified her. The moon goddess would not be so cruel. Would she? Attention! Daemon's voice boomed through the hall. Silence fell instantly. Every wolf turned to face their alpha. Tonight, under the full moon's light, we honor the old ways. The goddess will reveal the bonds she has woven. We will see who fate has chosen. The pack murmured with excitement. Unmated wolves exchanged nervous glances. Victoria smiled confidently, reaching for Daemon's hand. Daemon stood, his massive frame casting a shadow across the hall. We begin with the alpha's bond. Come forward if you feel the call. Alara's heart stopped. The thread in her chest pulled violently, a searing, undeniable force dragging her toward him. No, this cannot be. Her feet moved without permission. 1 step, 2 steps. The crowd parted, shocked gasps rippling through the hall as the servant girl walked toward the alpha's throne. What is she doing? Someone hissed. The Omega? She's lost her mind. Alara's vision tunneled. She could only see him. Daemon's eyes widened as the bond hit him too, a golden thread snapping into place between them, visible only to those with the sight. His face went from shock to horror to pure disgust in seconds. No, he whispered, then louder, no. Victoria leaped from her seat. What is this? Daemon, what is happening? Alara stopped 3 feet from the throne, her body shaking. The bond sang between them, desperate and pleading. She finally lifted her eyes to meet his. Alpha, I feel it. The bond. You are my. Stop. His voice was ice. Do not say it. The entire pack held its breath. The bond was sacred. To deny it was to defy the moon goddess herself. But Daemon's face twisted with rage and humiliation. You. He descended the throne steps slowly, each footfall like a death knell. The goddess paired me, Alpha of Silverwood, with a servant? With the unlucky orphan who brings death wherever she goes. I didn't ask for this, Alara whispered, tears burning her eyes. I never wanted. Of course you didn't ask for this, he roared. You are nothing. You are beneath me in every way. You are weak, powerless, cursed. Victoria's shock turned to vicious delight. Reject her, Damon. Reject this insult immediately. The rejection. Damon grabbed Alara's chin, forcing her head up. His touch burned through the bond, and she gasped at the pain and longing mixed together. His blue eyes were empty of any warmth. "I, Alpha Damon of Silverwood Pack," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Formally and completely reject you, Alara, as my fated mate." The bond screamed. It was not a metaphor. Alara heard it. A wailing cry as the golden thread between them was ripped apart. The pain was unimaginable, like her chest was being torn open from the inside. She collapsed to her knees, a scream ripping from her throat. Felt like dying. It felt like her soul was being shredded piece by piece. The pack did not rush to help her. They laughed. Led by Victoria's triumphant cackle, the warriors and families of Silverwood mocked the fallen Omega. Pathetic! The goddess must have made a mistake. Look at her, crying on the floor like a child. Damon watched her suffer with cold satisfaction. The rejected are bad luck. They are broken. They bring shame to the pack. He turned to his beta, Marcus, a scarred man with dead eyes. Remove her. Exile her beyond our borders. Let the forest have her. Alpha, the storm, Marcus began. Now, cast into the storm. Two warriors dragged Alara through the hall. She couldn't walk. The bond's destruction had left her hollow and weak. They pulled her past the warm fires, past the feast tables, out into the bitter cold night. A winter storm was raging, snow and ice driven by howling winds. They didn't stop at the pack's border. They dragged her deep into the whispering forest, a place where even pack wolves feared to tread. Stories spoke of spirits, of wolves who went mad, of ancient magic that twisted reality. Alpha's orders, the first warrior said, throwing her down in the snow. You die out here. Wait! Alara gasped, her voice barely audible. Please, just leave me at the border. I will not return. The second warrior spat at her feet. You don't deserve mercy. You embarrassed our Alpha with your existence. They turned and walked away, their torches disappearing into the white darkness. Alara lay in the snow, the cold seeping into her bones. The storm buried her in minutes. She closed her eyes and waited for death. But something inside her refused to surrender. A small, stubborn spark of survival. She had endured 18 years of cruelty. She had survived beatings, starvation, and endless humiliation. She would not let Damon's rejection be the end. With trembling hands, she pushed herself up. The wind tore at her thin servant's tunic. She had no cloak, no boots, no food. She had nothing but the will to take one more step. She stumbled through the forest, her lips turning blue, her fingers numb. Just as her legs gave out, she saw it. A faint orange glow through the trees. Fire. Shelter. The abandoned lodge. Alara crawled toward the light. It came from a crumbling hunter's lodge, half collapsed and forgotten, but its stone fireplace still held dying embers. She dragged herself through the broken door and collapsed on the dirt floor. The warmth from the embers was faint, but it was life. She found a few pieces of wood stacked against the wall and, with shaking hands, fed the fire. Slowly, painfully, heat returned to her body. That was when she heard it. A low, pained whimper from the shadows. Alara froze. She was not alone. Golden eyes appeared in the darkness. Not one pair, 8 pairs. 8 wolves emerged from the corners of the lodge, and they were dying. Their fur was matted with blood and mud. Their bodies were thin, ribs showing through their coats. Some had deep wounds that oozed dark, infected blood. They looked like they had been through a war and lost. The largest wolf, a magnificent silver male with a scar across his muzzle, lay near the back wall. He watched her with intelligent, agonized eyes. Alara's breath caught. This was no ordinary wolf. Even dying, he radiated power. You are hurt, she whispered. The silver wolf's ears flicked. He understood her. Alara knew she should run. These could be rogues, dangerous and unpredictable. But she looked at them, truly looked, and saw herself. Abandoned, broken, left to die. "I have nothing," she said softly, her voice cracking. "No food, no medicine. But I will not leave you to die alone." The choice to save. The lodge had been a healer's outpost once. Alara searched the rotted shelves and found clay jars covered in dust. She recognized some labels from the pack's healer. Yarrow for bleeding, willow bark for pain, crushed nettle for infection. The silver wolf growled weakly as she approached, but he did not snap. She knelt beside him and saw the problem. A deep gash on his shoulder, black around the edges. Cursed wound. Dark magic. "This will hurt," she warned. She crushed the yarrow and nettle into a paste, then pressed it into the wound. The wolf's body convulsed, a howl of pain echoing through the lodge, but he did not bite her. She wrapped the wound with strips torn from her already ruined tunic. One by one, she tended to the other 7 wolves. A brown female with a broken paw. A gray male with claws torn out. A young black wolf with a poisoned bite. She worked through the night, using every scrap of knowledge she had learned from watching the pack healer. She found a single dried fish and a handful of frozen berries in a forgotten storage box. It was barely enough for one meal. She looked at the 8 starving wolves, then at the food. The silver wolf watched her, his golden eyes sharp despite his pain. Alara divided the food into 9 tiny portions. She gave 8 to the wolves and kept the smallest for herself. It was 3 berries. It would not keep her alive, but it was something. The wolves ate slowly, carefully, as if they could not believe she was real. "I do not know who you are," Alara said quietly, sitting by the fire. "I do not know why you are here or what hurt you, but we are the same now. Rejected, cast out, left to die." She looked at the silver wolf. "If we die together. But maybe we fight to live instead." The silver wolf stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he crawled closer and rested his massive head on her lap. It was trust. It was gratitude. It was a promise. Alara's hand, still numb from the cold, gently stroked his fur. "We will survive this," she whispered. "I do not know how, but we will." The return of the hunters. Morning came with brutal cold. The storm had passed, leaving the forest buried in snow. Alara woke to find all 8 wolves curled around her, sharing their body heat. They had kept her alive through the night. She had just added wood to the fire when the door exploded inward. Marcus, Damon's beta, stood in the entrance with 4 warriors. They were armed with silver blades and crossbows. "Well," Marcus sneered, "the Omega survived. Impressive." His eyes swept over the wolves. "And she made friends with rogues. Even better." Alara scrambled to her feet, positioning herself between the warriors and the wolves. "Leave us alone. We are beyond your borders. You have no claim here." "Everything in this forest is Silverwood's territory," Marcus said, drawing his blade. "And Alpha Damon has decided that you are a loose end. You witnessed his rejection. You are a reminder of his humiliation. You need to disappear permanently." The warriors fanned out, surrounding the lodge. "And the rogues?" one warrior asked. "Kill them too. No witnesses." Marcus lunged at Alara, his blade aimed at her throat. She had no weapon, no training, no chance. The silver wolf moved like lightning. Despite his wounds, he launched himself at Marcus, his jaws clamping down on the beta's sword arm. Marcus screamed as bone crunched. The other 7 wolves surged forward, a coordinated attack that shocked the warriors. "They fight like soldiers," one warrior shouted. The wolves did not kill, but they were ruthlessly efficient. They disarmed the warriors, drove them back, and positioned themselves as a defensive wall. The brown female stood guard over Alara, her teeth bared. Marcus clutched his mangled arm, his face pale with shock and fury. "This is not over, Omega. Damon will burn this forest to find you." "Then let him come," Alara said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But he will not find a helpless servant." He will find someone who refuses to die. The warriors retreated, dragging Marcus with them. The silver wolf watched them go, then turned to Alara. His golden eyes held a new emotion: respect. Alara sank to the floor, adrenaline leaving her body shaking. The wolves gathered around her, a protective circle of fur and warmth. "Who are you?" she whispered to the silver wolf. "You are not rogues. You are something else." The wolf's eyes gleamed with secrets he could not yet share. But Alara knew one thing with certainty. Her life had changed forever. She was no longer the forgotten Omega. She was the woman who saved 8 dying wolves. And they, somehow, would save her in return. Rising from the ashes. The truth in golden eyes. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus and the warriors fled the lodge. 3 weeks of survival that transformed Alara from a trembling servant into something else entirely. The 8 wolves had recovered slowly under her care, their wounds healing with surprising speed once the dark magic was purged from their systems. But they remained wolves, unable to shift back to human form. Alara had learned their personalities. The silver wolf, whom she called Storm, was clearly the leader. He was intelligent, strategic, and watched everything with calculating golden eyes. The brown female, Ember, was fierce and protective, often sleeping across the doorway. The gray male, Ash, was the scout, disappearing for hours to patrol their territory. The young black wolf, Shadow, followed Alara everywhere like a devoted guardian. But something was wrong. Wolves this intelligent, this coordinated, should be able to shift. They were not rogues. They were trapped. One cold morning, Alara was checking Storm's shoulder wound when she noticed something. Beneath the scar tissue, there was a faint black marking, like a brand burned deep into his flesh. She had seen it before on the others but thought it was just scarring. Now, looking closer, she recognized the pattern. "A curse mark," she whispered. Storm's entire body went rigid. His golden eyes locked onto hers with desperate intensity. Alara had learned about curse marks from her mother before she died. Her mother had been a healer, one of the few Omegas who understood old magic. "Dark witches use these to bind shifters," she remembered her mother saying. "They trap the wolf form, cage the human mind. It is a torture worse than death." "You are not rogues," Alara said softly, her hand still on Storm's scar. "You are trapped. Someone did this to you on purpose." Storm's low whine was almost human in its anguish. "I will find a way to break it," Alara promised. "I do not know how yet, but I will not stop until you are free." Training in the wild. The wolves seemed to understand her promise. That very day they began teaching her. It started when Alara went to check her rabbit snares and found them all empty. She returned to the lodge frustrated and hungry. Storm stood waiting. He walked to the door, looked back at her, and growled softly. "Follow. You want me to come with you?" He nodded, an unmistakably human gesture. Alara followed him into the forest. Ash and Ember joined them, moving silently through the snow. They led her to a frozen stream where deer tracks marked the ice. Storm began demonstrating how to move downwind, how to read tracks, how to predict the prey's path. They were teaching her to hunt. Over the following weeks, the wolves trained her in survival. Ember showed her which plants were edible under the snow. Ash taught her how to move silently, how to hide her scent. Shadow, despite being young, was the best fighter. He sparred with her gently, teaching her how to dodge, where to strike, how to use her smaller size as an advantage. Storm was the strategist. He taught her to think 3 steps ahead, to read her environment, to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. Alara was no longer the frightened Omega who had been cast out. Her body grew lean and strong. Her reflexes sharpened. Her mind learned to think like a warrior. The bond wound in her chest, the hollow place where Damon's rejection had torn her soul, slowly filled with something new: purpose. One evening, as she sat by the fire cleaning a rabbit she had caught herself, Storm approached. He carried something in his mouth, a leather pouch old and worn. He dropped it at her feet. Inside were ancient papers, brittle with age. Alara unfolded them carefully. They were written in the old language, the one her mother had taught her to read. Her hands trembled as she translated the words. "The binding curse of Morwenna," she read aloud. "A dark enchantment to imprison the elite shadow guard, the king's personal warriors, in their beast forms. Only two remedies exist: the blood of the caster, or the essence of the moonfire blossom, found only at Dawn Ridge under the full moon." Alara's head snapped up. "The elite shadow guard. You are the king's warriors." Storm shifted closer, his eyes confirming the truth. "But that means—" Alara's mind raced. "The king. Where is the king? Is he alive?" Storm placed his paw on the papers, directing her attention to a specific passage. She read, "The Alpha King himself shall be bound as the silver wolf, stripped of voice and form, until the curse is lifted or death claims him." Alara looked at Storm, truly looked at him. The silver fur, the commanding presence, the golden eyes that held the weight of leadership. "You are not just a warrior. You are the king." Storm, Alpha King Kale of the realm, bowed his great head in confirmation. "The quest for freedom." "Dawn Ridge," Alara said, studying the crude map on the back of the papers. "That is a 3-day journey from here, and it borders Silverwood territory." Kale growled his disapproval, but Alara was already planning. "The full moon is in 5 days. If we leave tomorrow, we can reach it in time." She looked at the 8 wolves. "You saved me when I had nothing. You taught me to survive, to fight, to be strong. Now it is my turn to save you." The wolves gathered around her, their eyes gleaming with hope they had not felt in months. They left at dawn. The journey was brutal. The forest was deep with snow, and they had to avoid Silverwood patrols. Twice, they came across hunting parties, and Ash's scouting saved them from discovery. They traveled by night, slept in frozen caves, and survived on what little game they could catch. Alara's body ached, but she pushed forward. Kale stayed at her side constantly, his presence a steady comfort. She found herself talking to him during the long, cold nights. "I do not know what I will do after this," she admitted on the second night, huddled against his warm fur. "I cannot return to Silverwood. I have no pack, no home. But for the first time in my life, I do not feel lost. I feel like I have a purpose." Kale pressed his head against her shoulder, a gesture of understanding and something deeper, something that made her heart race. "You are a king," she whispered. "When you are free, you will return to your throne. You will have duties, responsibilities. You will forget the Omega girl who helped you." Kale pulled back and stared at her with such intensity that she gasped. He pressed his nose to her chest, right where the bond scar lived. Then he pressed his nose to his own chest. The message was clear: "I will not forget. You are bonded to my heart, even if not by fate." Tears filled Alara's eyes. "We need to survive first. Then we can think about what comes next." Dawn Ridge. They reached Dawn Ridge on the 4th day, exhausted and running out of time. The ridge was a high cliff overlooking the forest, exposed to brutal winds. At its peak, where the moonlight would touch first, Alara could see small silvery flowers growing from cracks in the rock. "The moonfire blossoms," she breathed, but they were not alone. "Well, well," a familiar voice called from below. "The dead Omega returns." Alara's blood turned to ice. Alpha Daemon emerged from the tree line, flanked by Marcus, Victoria, and a dozen warriors. They had been waiting. "How did you know we would come here?" Alara demanded. Victoria laughed, her beautiful face twisted with malice. "Did you think we would not investigate the cursed wolves? We hired the witch Morwenna to tell us everything. She is the one who cursed them. And when we described the silver wolf, she told us exactly who he was." Victoria's eyes glittered with greed. The Alpha King himself, helpless as a beast. Daemon stepped forward, his blue eyes cold. "I could not have planned this better. I reject my Omega mate, making me appear strong to the other packs. She flees into the forest and dies, or so everyone believes. Meanwhile, I discover the king's location and can claim I rescued him." He smiled cruelly. Or, if he refuses to cooperate, I can ensure he never returns to his throne. Either way, Silverwood rises in power. You are a traitor, Elara said, her voice steady despite her fear. I am ambitious, Daemon corrected. And you, Elara, are a loose end that needs to be eliminated. Kill her, he ordered his warriors. But take the wolves alive. They are worth more as prisoners. The warriors charged up the ridge. Kale and his guard formed a defensive line, but they were still weakened, still trapped in their wolf forms. Elara had no weapon except a small hunting knife. She ran, not away from the fight, but toward the flowers. If she could reach the moonfire blossoms and get them to Kale, the curse would break. The warriors chased her, and she felt a blade slice across her back, hot blood soaking her tunic. She stumbled but kept running. Storm's howl echoed behind her, filled with rage and desperation. She reached the flowers, falling to her knees in the rocky soil. Her hands closed around the silvery blossoms, their petals cold as moonlight. An arrow struck her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body, but she clutched the flowers to her chest and turned back. Daemon stood 20 feet away, a crossbow in his hands, already loading another bolt. You cannot save them, Elara. You are just an Omega, weak, powerless. I am more than you ever saw, Elara said through gritted teeth. She ran back down the ridge. Warriors tried to block her path, but Ember and Ash crashed into them, buying her seconds. She could see Kale fighting Marcus, his jaws locked on the beta's arm. Blood stained the snow. Kale! She screamed. The silver wolf's head turned. Their eyes met. She threw the moonfire blossoms through the air. Kale leaped, catching them in his jaws. The effect was immediate and explosive. The transformation. Light erupted from Kale's body, a blinding silver radiance that forced everyone to shield their eyes. The curse marks on all 8 wolves glowed black, then shattered like glass. The sound of bones breaking and reforming filled the air, and Elara watched in awe as the wolves transformed. Where Storm had stood, a man now rose to his feet. He was tall, powerfully built, with silver-streaked black hair and those same piercing golden eyes. He was magnificent, dressed in the tattered remains of royal armor that had somehow survived the curse. 7 other warriors stood with him, all fierce and battle-ready. Kale's voice, the first human words he had spoken in months, rang across the ridge. I am Alpha King Kale of the realm, commander of the elite Shadow Guard. And you, Daemon of Silverwood, have committed high treason. Daemon's face went white. Victoria stumbled backward, her confidence evaporating. Seize them, Kale commanded. His warriors moved with deadly precision, disarming Silverwood's fighters in seconds. Marcus tried to run and was brought down by Ash, who was revealed to be Captain Rowan, Kale's second-in-command. Kale walked toward Elara, who was still on her knees, bleeding from the arrow wound. He knelt in front of her, his large hands cupping her face gently. You are hurt, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I am alive, she whispered. You are free. That is all that matters. No, Kale said firmly. You matter. You have mattered since the moment you chose to save 8 dying wolves instead of yourself. He carefully removed the arrow from her shoulder, and Ember, now revealed as Commander Lyssa, the team's healer, rushed forward to bind the wound. Kale stood, helping Elara to her feet. He kept her close, his arm around her waist to steady her. He turned to face Daemon and Victoria, who were being held by Shadow, now a young but fierce warrior named Thorn. You hired a Dark Witch to attack your king, Kale said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You attempted to hide your crime by leaving us to die, and when an innocent Omega discovered us, you tried to murder her to protect your secret. I can explain, Daemon started. Silence. The command was not loud, but it was absolute. Daemon's mouth snapped shut, his alpha power useless against the true king. But before I pass judgment, there is something else I must address. Kale turned to Elara. She looked up at him, confused and exhausted. I heard every word you spoke to me during our imprisonment, Kale said softly, for her ears alone. Every kindness, every sacrifice, every moment you showed me what true strength looks like. He took her hand. You said I would forget you once I returned to my throne. You were wrong. I could never forget the woman who saved my life, who fed me from her last meal, who fought for me when she had every reason to give up. Kale, I cannot offer you a fated bond, he said, his golden eyes intense. That is the goddess's gift alone. But I can offer you something stronger. A chosen bond. A bond built on respect, trust, and something I never thought I would feel again. He paused. Love. Alara's breath caught. You love me. I have loved you since the night you wrapped your arms around a dying wolf and promised him he would not die alone, Kale said. Will you accept my chosen bond? Will you stand at my side, not as a servant, but as my equal? As my Luna Queen? The words hung in the cold air. Damon made a sound of disbelief. Victoria looked like she might be sick. Alara looked at this powerful king, who had seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up, who had taught her strength when the world taught her weakness, who had shown her that she was never nothing. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I accept. Kale smiled, a true, genuine smile that transformed his stern face. He pulled her close and kissed her. It was not desperate or possessive like a fated bond's pull. It was chosen. It was real. It was theirs. A new bond, silver and gold, formed between them. It was different from the bond with Damon. This did not hurt, did not burn. It settled into her chest like coming home, warm and unbreakable. When they broke apart, Kale turned back to Damon. Now for your judgment. The price of betrayal. Please, Damon begged, all his arrogance gone. I was manipulated. The witch. You made your choices, Kale said coldly. You rejected your fated mate to pursue power. You allied with a dark witch. You attempted to murder your king. And when you failed, you tried to kill an innocent woman. Kale's warriors dragged Damon and Victoria forward, forcing them to kneel. I, King Kale, strip you of your titles, your ranks, and your pack bonds. You are exiled from all pack lands. You will wander as rogues, powerless and alone, until your last days. No. Victoria Srieked. I am from the Nightshade Pack. They will. Your pack has already been informed of your crimes, Commander Rowan said. They have disowned you. Kale raised his hand, and silver light flowed from him into Damon and Victoria. They screamed as their wolves were forcibly separated, not killed, but bound so deeply they would never shift again. They would live as weak humans in a world of wolves. Take them to the border and cast them out, Kale ordered. If they return, the sentence is death. The warriors obeyed, dragging the sobbing, powerless traitors away. Marcus and the other Silverwood warriors were left trembling. You followed illegal orders, Kale said to them. But you did not originate the crime. You will face trial and your fates will be decided by the council. But know this, mercy is earned, not given. A new beginning. As dawn broke over Dawn Ridge, Alara stood beside Kale, watching the sun rise. His arm was around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. What happens now? She asked. Now we return to the capital, Kale said. I reclaim my throne. I hunt down the witch Morwenna and make her pay for what she did. And I introduce the realm to their new Luna Queen. I am just an Omega, Alara said quietly. The court will never accept me. Kale turned her to face him. You are the woman who broke a curse that trapped 8 warriors and their king. You are the woman who survived rejection and exile and came back stronger. You are the woman I have chosen, and my choice is final. His eyes softened. But there is something else you should know. Commander Lissa examined you while treating your wounds. She is a healer, but she is also trained in bloodline magic. Alara frowned. What did she find? Your mother was not just a healer, Kale said gently. She carried the mark of the Crystal Moon bloodline, an ancient royal house that was thought to be extinct. Alara's world tilted. Royal? That is impossible. My mother was an Omega. She was a hidden princess, Kale explained, likely in hiding for her protection. Which means you, Elara, are not just an Omega. You are a royal by blood. The court cannot deny your claim. Tears filled Elara's eyes. Her mother had never told her. Had she died before she could reveal the truth? I do not need a bloodline to choose you, Kale said firmly. But I thought you should know. You were always meant for greatness. The world just could not see it yet. Elara looked out at the rising sun, at the forest that had nearly killed her, but had instead transformed her. She thought of Damon's rejection, the pain that had nearly destroyed her, and she realized something profound. His rejection had freed her to find her true destiny. Let us go home, she said to Kale. To our home. He smiled and kissed her forehead. Together, the elite Shadow Guard formed a protective circle around their king and their new queen as they began the journey back to the capital. Elara walked with her head high, no longer the Omega who served in shadows, but the woman who had saved a king and claimed her crown. Damon's rejection had been meant to break her. Instead, it had been the beginning of her rise. And somewhere in the forest, the banished Alpha and his co-conspirator stumbled through the snow, powerless and forgotten, while the woman they had called nothing prepared to rule a kingdom.